Welcome back to the Metzger Collection. In today's tour, as part of our Ancient Art History series, we are going to be looking at the art of Mesopotamia. In the culture of Mesopotamia, there are three movements which ultimately also impact the art of Mesopotamia. That is Sumerian, Akkadian, and Assyrian. We will be taking a quick look into each of those periods today, and I hope you enjoy. Mesopotamia was a civilization of considerable innovation. Their art was both practical and decorative and revolved around the daily rhythms of their life. Religious art was particularly important to them because much of their lives revolved around worship of the moon god. In early Mesopotamia, much of their artwork consists of clay or terracotta. Religion and mythology were two of their most important themes, and that will be very evident as we look into Sumerian and Akkadian art. In terms of architecture, those in Mesopotamia were able to build up complex city centers, mostly centered around the buildings of large temples or ziggurats, and these were multi-leveled temples that were able to be built from the ground up. It is often speculated that the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11 also bears some connection to the ziggurats. You can see a picture of a ziggurat being built here on this seal. We can also see the importance of religious art within the importance of ziggurats, because most of our monumental architecture that we know about from Mesopotamia comes in the forms of temples. Not much is actually known about political buildings or palaces, which really demonstrates that quality of emphasis on the religious aspect of life. Religion was also the primary theme for all of Sumerian and Akkadian sculpture. Almost any piece of sculpture we have served as either a tool for ritual in the temples or decoration for the temples. There are no existing statues of gods or goddesses or cult figurines, and all of the ones we have today are votive figures. And so the Sumerians believed that their sole purpose in life was to serve the gods. Therefore, when they were not physically in the temple praying themselves, they would leave little statuette figures of themselves to pray on their behalf. They have almost comic-looking gigantic eyes here, as you can see in the ones beside me, and that was to symbolize awed adoration, and then their hands are clasped in endless worship. Seals are one of the most prominent forms of Sumerian or Akkadian art. A cylinder-shaped seal could be rolled over wet clay and leave an impression in relief. These miniature designs would be carved onto a cylinder of either stone or another kind of shell. And because of the sheer detail of these designs, they were considered one of the higher forms of Sumerian art. Seals could be used as either a personal charm or just a means of identifying ownership. Let's take a closer look at some of the ones we have in the collection. Prominent among the subjects of these seals is complicated imagery of Sumerian mythology and religious ritual. This ritual scene seal, an impression from the time of Hammurabi, shows a ritual scene. The inscription reads, "The god Ninshubur, the faithful messenger of An, the god of heaven, is the wielder of the holy scepter. 2 horned caps mark out the minor gods, whereas 4 horns mark out the high gods. The goddess in the center is wearing a flounced woolen robe in Sumerian style and holds her hand upward in a posture of supplication." This next seal is called the Gilgamesh seal. This jadeite seal shows one of the typical scenes of a bearded nude hero wearing only a belt in a fight with a lion. The hero is thought by many scholars to represent Gilgamesh, the central figure of several Sumerian epic poems. Gilgamesh wrestled with lions and also the bullman Enkidu, who would become his friend. Gilgamesh was one of the most important figures of Sumerian mythology, and there are many seals that depict scenes similar to this. This next seal is one that specifically identifies ownership. This is the seal of a governor. It is a typical introduction scene. Hashmer, the governor of the city of Ishkansin, is introduced to the seated king, Ur-Nammu. Another goddess is in attendance. The inscription in Sumerian reads, "Ur-Nammu, mighty man, king of Ur. Hashmer, governor of Ishkansin, is your servant." The art of Assyrian Babylon took on quite a bit of a different flavor. The primary motive of art was to impress and intimidate. Therefore, their most common themes were might and power. Scenes of hunting and war were very, very common. Ancient Assyria was a war-hungry nation, and they were very brutal to their victims. They've mastered many forms of torture before they were killed, and one of their most favorite methods of execution was to fillet their victims alive. And therefore, they were rightfully very intimidating. And not surprisingly, their art boasts of power and military strength. Their most celebrated form of art were reliefs, which shows strong geometric lines and also lots of fine detail. And we will have the pleasure of looking at a few of those today. The Black Obelisk was erected around 825 BC by King Shalmaneser III. It was featured prominently in one of the courtyards of perhaps either a temple or a palace in the capital city. It's a very important piece of art, so we're going to take a bit of a closer look. Following the Assyrian conventions of art, the Black Obelisk contains 5 epigrams with reliefs encircling the obelisk. Each epigram describes tributes paid to him by various kingdoms. These images aren't particularly flattering and are clearly intended to elevate the position of Shalmaneser while shaming these other kingdoms. The Black Obelisk is best known for holding the first image of a biblical figure within one of his reliefs. The top of the obelisk resembles a ziggurat, and this part, as well as the bottom, holds detailed cuneiform descriptions of his successful military campaigns. Undoubtedly, this obelisk was meant to boast of Shalmaneser's power and military finesse, which would strike terror into the hearts of his enemies. This is a Babylonian relief showing a soldier putting out the eyes of some of its victims. This can be connected to King Zedekiah, the last king of Judah, who also suffered this fate when Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, laid siege to Jerusalem and then defeated it. While it is not nearly as detailed as some of the other reliefs that we have looked at, it is undoubtedly would be very intimidating and boasts of the military strength of the Babylonians. This is a fragment from the frieze, The Hunt of Ashurbanipal, and the strong geometric lines and careful detail are very evident in this piece. It carries a lot of elegance and yet strength. We're going to take a closer look at this one because the detail is so amazing. Although the most famous of the Nineveh friezes depict the lion hunts, in this panel, Ashurbanipal with hounds hunts wild asses. The presence of these animals was regarded as a symbol of desolation, and their killing was a meritorious activity suitable for the monarch. This piece would undoubtedly be impressive and boasts of Ashurbanipal's skill in hunting. Despite the very low relief, the vitality and grace of these carvings make them supreme among the masterpieces of Assyrian art. And that is it for today's tour of the Metzger Collection. I hope you enjoyed our trips through Sumerian, Akkadian, and Assyrian art. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss next week's tour on ancient Egypt. I hope you enjoyed this, and see you all next week.